So here we go. I was brought up in a very strict home. In fact, my father was a preacher. That made me the son of a preacher man. At 3 years old, I got a hold of a little New Testament, and I went around the house sucking it to him in the name of the Lord. By the time I reached 4 and 5 years old, I was the only kid in the block that wanted to be a preacher. All of my other friends were going to be firemen or cowboys, and it seemed that just being a preacher wasn't too exciting. And so in 5 years old, going to kindergarten, I got together my little kindergarten buddies and I formed a gang. One afternoon coming out of kindergarten, we went down to the 5 and 10 cent store and we bought some rubber knives. So in our spare time, we went around and stabbed people. One afternoon, there was a woman pushing a baby carriage down the street. I was hiding behind the fence with my buddies. I said, "Hey, here comes a good suspect." I jumped over the fence and I said, "Hold it, ma'am. Come on, guys, do your thing." They ran up and stabbed her one time each. Then I stepped over to finish her off. She knew that I was a preacher's son. She laughed at me and made fun of me and said, "Hey, boy, is this what your father preaches and teaches you to do?" And so I turned away and started home, let down and discouraged. My friends said, "Brian, she sure told you, man." And so I went in and I got into my brother's Boy Scout camping kit and I walked out of the house carrying his hunting knife. I was out to prove that I was someone tough, that I wasn't scared of anybody or anything. I started running across that street that hot sunny afternoon, not realizing what I was doing. I ran up to the back of the carriage to prove I was tough and plunged the knife into the back of the carriage, ripping it open as I ran by, and my friends yelling and calling after me. I missed that baby's brain within less than an inch of instantly killing it. Almost a murder at 5. But when my old man got a hold of me, I didn't sit down till about 7. At 9 years old, my father grabbed me by the ear and twisted it and said, "Brian, I want you to be religious. I want you to be a good example to your Sunday school friends around you." And so I went to church, but I know and you know that these teachers, your parents, can't make you grow up to be anything you don't want to be. You're going to do your own thing. And so did I. I got a hold of a little weed and rolled it up in a cigarette and put it in the lining of my jacket. And so after Sunday school in the morning, while everybody was going up into the sanctuary for morning worship service, I snuck downstairs in behind the furnace, in the furnace room, and took a few of my friends with me, said, "Come on, guys, let's have a few drags before going to church." Just then the furnace fan clicked on and sucked that old smoke right into the back of the furnace. Meanwhile, upstairs, back in the sanctuary, my father's singing, "Rock of Ages." And here some of the church deacons started nudging one another. "Hey, what's happening?" That furnace fan pumped that smoke right up through all the air registers right into the sanctuary. They thought the church was burning down. My father and the deacons came down, busting into the furnace room door. And you know, I didn't sit down till about 12 years old. At 12 years old, I thought I had really grown up fast. Oh yeah, everything was going good. I had my collar up, cigarette in the corner of my mouth. I guess I was called a hood. But I got together with Davy and we went down and busted into my first place, a food market. The police came, but I got away. I told my buddies all about it that same afternoon and they picked me up and carried me down the street like I was some kind of hero, 12 years old, running from the police, busting in a joint, and I got away. They finally left and said, "We'll see you later, Brian," and I turned into my front yard. I looked up and there coming down out of the house was my father. He only weighs about 265 pounds. I stopped dead in my tracks. I wasn't looking at him though, I was looking at what he was carrying. The look on his face said, "Brian, the police had just been here. I've got to whip you because I love you." "Sure, Dad." I started running right then. The first night I stayed at my friend's house, but his mom didn't seem to like me too well. And so the next night I was looking for a place to stay and I ended up in the emergency section of the city hospital. And there, sleeping in this little emergency section room, I looked over and there in the corner of the room was a little portable television sitting on a coffee table. Well, I knew it had to go or I had to go, so we both went. I took it down to my friends and sold it. That started me in organized crime. I'd get a group of guys to go into the front of a hardware store and they'd go around like they were going to swing or scoop something, swipe something. And while all the personnel and floor managers were watching them, I'd sneak in the back door, fill my sack full of clock radios, electric appliances, whatever I could get a hold of, play the dip and the till if I could. By the time I reached 13 years old, I got so good I could steal a radio and leave the music behind. At 14 years old, I got introduced to pills. I thought that just pills were for sick people, medicine. But at this party, my girlfriend pulled out a bottle of pills and said, "Hey, Brian, how'd you like to take a couple, man? It'll really stone your mind." I thought, "No, man, I'm not sick. I'll go ahead, man." I thought if a girl could take 1 or 2, I could at least take 4 or 5. I was kind of interested to see what these pretty little capsules would do, and so I took some.